Everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and indicate, if you would, what your awards committee is or how you're involved as an ACRL awards stakeholder. And if we have other people here, just say hello in the chat if you're willing. So as you just heard, this session will be recorded and the slides and recording will be sent to all the invitees following the meeting. If you have any questions during this presentation, please put them in the chat. We'll try to answer questions at the end of the meeting, but if there are any questions that we don't have time for, staff will answer them in an FAQ that will also be sent following the meeting. Let's see. Oh, good. We're getting some chat welcomes. Thanks, everybody, for doing that. Next slide, please, Brian. So our presenters today, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'll start first. I'm Beth McNeil. I have the distinct pleasure and honor of being the ACRL president this year. And I'm at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, where I am the dean. And I'll turn to my colleague, Leo Lowe.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leo Lowe, and I'm the vice president of ACRL, and I am at the University of New Mexico in very sunny Albuquerque.
Thank you, Leo. Let's turn to John Lehner.
I'm John Lehner, and I was co-chair of the Awards Implementation Task Force. I'm librarian emeritus at the University of Houston.
Thank you, John, and big thanks to you and your co-chair for leading that group. Melissa.
I am Melissa Wong. I am an adjunct instructor in the iSchool at the University of Illinois. I was a member of the Awards Process Implementation Task Force, and I am the chair of the new ACRL Awards Coordinating Committee.
Thank you, Melissa, for all of that good work. Laurel.
Good afternoon. I'm Laurel Luttrell, Interim Associate Dean at Kansas State University, and I also am a member of the task force. I'm very honored to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurel. Let's see, Thomas?
Thomas is actually unable to join us, but he was a member of the task force.
Great. Thank you, Allison. And then Brian.
Hello, I'm Brian Lim, and I am ACRL Program Coordinator.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks today for controlling our slides in this meeting. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So this is lifting the awards pause, 2024-25 process review and 25-26 issue awards again. So I'd like to begin by highlighting that each awards committee will be charged with completing a process review during this next year, 24-2025. This work will begin when new committee terms officially start on July 1, 2024, and should be completed by June 30th, 2025. Awards will be issued in 25-26. So today in this presentation, we're going to go over the approved actions regarding issuing awards, the work of the awards committees, and updates to when awards will be issued. Let's look next and talk about a little bit of history. Thank you, Brian. So the timeline. As many of you know, the ACRL Awards program has been on pause since January 2021. In February 2021, an initial awards task force was charged to review and make recommendations on the ACRL Awards program. And then in January 2022, the board approved the task force's recommendations, including creating a new awards implementation task force that would explore replacing the current awards program and make recommendations on the creation of a new division-level awards coordinating committee. Fast forward a couple of months, and in August of 2022, the board approved the awards process implementation task force to make specific implementable recommendations for streamlining the ACRL awards process. And then in January 2024, the board approved the creation of a division level awards coordinating committee, and the pause was also lifted. An awards committee should use the 2024-2025 program year to work closely with the awards coordinating committee to review processes. And it's expected that awards will be given in the 25-26 program year. During this presentation, we will share the full approved recommendations and also next steps to implementation. I'd also like to share that last month, the board approved for RBMS, Rare Book and Manuscript section, to proceed with the awarding of the LEAB Exhibition Awards in the 24-25 fiscal year. Because RBMS completed on their own a full review of their procedures to ensure equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI principles, are incorporated into all aspects of the LEAB award. RBMS also agreed to align RBMS procedures with any forthcoming procedures from the ACRL Awards Coordinating Committee, if it is needed. If your awards committee has completed a full review similar to RBMS and feels that the work has been completed, please contact your board liaison if you believe your group does not need to complete a process review in 2024-2025. Before we turn to the next slide, well, that's okay, Brian. This is a lot. A lot of work has gone into this long time frame and various committees involved in moving forward. So if you have any questions about that, please note them and we'll try to tackle them as we keep going. Okay, Brian, thanks. All right, so awards definitions. Also in April, this past April, the board approved definitions for awards and grants. And the board will look to the awards coordinating committee later this year to further develop guidelines on grants and if professional development funding should be provided with grants. So the definition for awards on your screen: non-monetary recognition of a specific person or persons or institution or institutions to acknowledge achievement. And then grants. It's the distribution of competitive funding for a specific project planning or project implementation given to a specific person or institution or institutions that benefits the profession. Okay, Brian, thank you. I think I turn now to my colleague Leo Lowe.
Right. Thank you, Beth. So I'll be talking about the awards coordinating committee and the awards committees. Brian, can you advance the slide? So the first one is the awards coordinating committee. So the charge is to provide leadership and oversight for the ACRL awards program. So in 2024 to 2025, it is anticipated that the committee will be working very closely with the awards committee on establishing a process for reviewing the awards and grants. And I will be the staff liaison, and the appointments are nearly completed. The terms will begin on July 1st, 2024, and I'll be working with the chairs to schedule the first meeting this summer. So you can see the tasks on the screen: review the awards program on a regular basis, establish a process for reviewing awards and grants, provide annual training and resources on awards-related equity practices, and then work with ACRL staff on the submission platform for nominations. Next slide, please. And this is the rest of the approved tasks for the awards coordinating committee. Help to identify potential nominees and solicit nominations, and make sure an individual group does not receive more than a single award for the same publication or program. Collect, share data, work with ACRL staff to hold annual ceremony for awards and grant recipients. Develop and maintain a calendar of the committee's work, and then file an annual report. Most of these items pertain to issuing awards and will be implemented in the 25 to 26 program year. Next slide, please. So here's a graphic showing all the ACRL awards. A lot there, so I'm going to leave it on the screen for a few seconds. And also I'm going to put a link to all these awards in the chat so you can take a look at that a little bit easier. But do take a look and let me know whether it's in the chat or later on if there are any updates that the staff or the board will work on making any necessary updates. Please note that if a new award is created, that the ACRL board must approve through the board action request process. So these are the responsibilities of the award committees. So administrating units should establish a minimum committee size for each jury and have a clear process for appointing committee members. And units should strive for diverse representation and adequate rotation on committees. And in the case of smaller sections, the units may need to develop a strategy to build volunteer pools, including recruiting members from outside the section's memberships. It's hard to read all the responsibilities. So basically, establishing and documenting a nominations and selection process. Also work with ACRL staff and the coordinating committee to publicize the nomination process. Ensuring an adequate number of nominations are received, and reviewing nominations, selecting an award recipient, and working with the coordinating committees and ACRL staff to publicize the recipients, and then reviewing the award descriptions and also filing the annual report. Please note that not all of these items are expected to be completed in the 2024 to 25 year. So now I'm going to pass it on to Brian, I believe, to talk about the ALA Connect community.
Yes, thank you. And to help keep all awards stakeholders updated, staff has created the ACRL Awards Stakeholders ALA Connect community. Staff will add to this group the current awards coordinating committee, section awards committees, and division level awards committees. Staff will share awards updates here, and members are encouraged to use this space for communication and document sharing. If you have any questions or need someone added or removed from the community, please let me know. And I will pass to Roel.
Good afternoon. The process review for this task, all administering units should develop their own criteria and procedures for nominating and selecting award recipients as appropriate to the individual award following a set of policies. Each awards committee is charged with a review of the description, selection criteria, and selection process for the awarded juries. This work should be completed during the 24 to 25 program year and should be done in communication with the awards coordinating committee. Next slide, please. Thank you. Items for consideration include, but need not be limited to, the items included here on the slide. It's recommended that the process review begins with an overview of the award, then a review for gendered and racialized language, then creation of process documentation. And these include reviewing the purpose, description, and selection, examining the language in the award description, and then needing to document the processes for selecting and recruiting awardees. Next slide, please. Here are more recommended items for awards committees when they complete their process review. Awards committees should ensure processes align with the approved policy in Chapter 12 of the ACRL Guide to Policies and Procedures, determine a minimum number of required nominees, and identify ways to increase nominees. And you can see the summary here on the page and a link to the Chapter 12. Next slide, please. It was approved for a section on equity training to be required to provide training on the equity practices for the members of awards committees. The members must complete the training within 3 months of their appointment. For the first program year, the training will most likely take place more than 3 months into the program year. More information on this training will be shared in the awards stakeholders ALA Connect community that Brian referred to earlier, as details become available. It was also approved for a section of members on the awards committees to consult the ACRL policy 15.3 when encountering conflict during their time of service. The provided link directs the members to the 15.3 conflict of interest in ACRL general policy statements, just in case any members of the committee might find themselves in a conflict of interest situation with nominees or awardees. And next, I will turn it over to John to talk about the awards policies in more detail.
Thank you, Laurel. The task force recommended to the ACRL board that ACRL modifies or adopts the following policies as part of Chapter 12 awards section in the ACRL Guide to Policies and Procedures. So you can see the affected sections here in the slide. In this portion, we're going to go over briefly the policy changes. These policies will apply to all ACRL awards, including the achievement awards and grants. One of the major recommendations of the task force was ending cash awards. And the principal rationale for ending cash gifts is the significant equity issue created by the funding processes for the various awards. Funding for awards is inconsistent, often dependent on external donors. This has resulted in large differentials in the size of cash gifts for different awards, and in some instances, variation in the size of the cash gift from year to year for the same award. The lack of systematic and consistent funding creates substantial inequities. The funding issues are fundamental to equity, and the inequities introduced by the various funding sources cannot be overcome. There were questions about the endowed awards. The endowments for the endowed awards should be used to cover administrative costs of these awards. The awards with standing endowments are the Lieb Award, RBMS, the Oberle Award, STS, and the Hugh Atkinson Award, ACRL and Core. The board approved the task force's recommendation that cash awards no longer be made to the recipients of these awards. There are awards that are actually grants. The task force's funding working group noted that there are 2 awards that are grants. The board approved that these awards be continued, but be renamed as grants to clearly distinguish them from the other awards. As noted earlier, the board approved in April definitions for awards and grants, and how professional development fits within these definitions will be decided by the awards coordinating committee. Any updates will be posted to the awards stakeholders ALA Connect community. With that, I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, John. Another recommendation from the task force that the board accepted was a division-wide policy that membership in ACRL and or a section is not required in order for to be nominated or to receive an award. So that will be a change, I think, for some awards. Brian, next slide, please. The task force also recommended a policy which the board accepted related to individuals potentially winning multiple awards for the same work. This was an issue that had actually been identified by the first task force. So the new policy is that no individual or group should receive more than a single award for the same publication or program. It's worth noting that does not mean that somebody couldn't win 2 different awards. It just means they can't win 2 awards for the same piece of work. And so the section committees or the awards committees will be working with the awards coordinating committee we will figure out a process essentially for kind of looking at awards committees final selections and making sure that we don't have duplication. And if there is duplication, figuring out how to handle that. I think next slide, please, Brian. Another change will be that there will be an awards portal, and all nominations for awards will go through a single portal. This will allow ACRL to develop better statistics as we look at how many people are nominated for awards each year. And we also anticipate that it will increase the number of nominations for awards. We have had one ACRL awards committee that a few years ago went to an online nomination form. It very much increased the number of nominations that they received. So the awards coordinating committee will be working on the portal. The general vision is that the kind of the first page will ask for some demographic information that would be standard to all awards. And then depending on what award the nominator is putting in a nomination for, they will be taken to an award specific page to collect the information that the awards committee would like to gather. And so the awards coordinating committee will be working with the awards committees to shape that portal. Next slide, Brian. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, we are going to move to a single division-wide awards ceremony that will take place each spring. And that will ensure that everybody who receives an award receives kind of an appropriate and equitable recognition for their award, and in some cases will kind of ease the process for awards committee chairs of having some kind of celebration and recognition of their recipient. And then as part of that, ACRL will also continue to announce award winners in CRL News. And I think with that, I'm handing it back to you, Beth.
Thank you, Melissa, and actually everyone who's helped with our presentation today. So next steps, on your screen, you'll see a link to the ACRL Awards page. Questions go to Brian Lim, who introduced himself earlier. And following this presentation, Brian will be sending the slides and recording to all who were invited. Staff will also be working on an FAQ, and we'll post this to ALA Connect community. So please use the ALA Connect community or reach out to Brian if you have any questions or comments throughout the program year. And staff will be updating the ACRL Awards page, and you can contact ACRL Program Coordinator Brian Lim once again if you have questions. I'm wondering if we have questions in the chat, or let's see. Actually, Brian and Allison, I'm not seeing any. Am I looking in the wrong place?
I'm not seeing any. If you want to stop sharing the presentation, Brian, I think you can do that, and people can either unmute or use the chat if there are any questions.
All right, let's see. We're starting to see some in the chat. Let's see. If a person receives an award nomination, but then leaves the profession entirely, is the person still eligible? Question from Eric. That's a great question. I think we opened it up to non-members being recipients of awards. I'm looking to John and Allison on the screen. Yes, we did. No, Beth, stop talking. Yes, we did. All right. So to Eric Edwards' question, yes, the person is still eligible. Rachel, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Beth. I'm Rachel. I'm the current chair of STS, the Science and Technology section. I was just wondering, I know when I was chair of membership, we were automatically on the ACRL-wide membership committee by being chairs of the membership of the different sections. So I was just wondering, how are the awards chairs in the section going to be represented on the ACRL-wide awards committee?
A good question, Rachel. I don't remember. Allison, are we appointing?
I don't think there's direct representation from each of the awards committees on the awards coordinating committee, but I know that the awards coordinating committee is tasked to work very closely with the awards committees. So I think there'll be probably open forums, requests for information, feedback, if there is a need for that. And then also, of course, the awards committees can reach out to the awards coordinating committee.
Is there a way to revisit that at all? I just feel like that's a really big disconnect from the people doing the work than to have a coordinating committee that doesn't include the people doing the work.
I think that could be something, if needed, the board could consider updating the composition.
Great. Thank you, Allison and Rachel. I'm going to go to the chat now and catch up on questions. So at the ceremony, will awardees be given time for a thank you speech? So a reminder, we're planning on a virtual ceremony, and I see no reason why they wouldn't be able to say brief remarks. But again, I don't know that we've discussed that, the ceremony itself, very deeply. Melissa, do you or John or Allison know if we've talked about that at all?
We have not talked about a specific format. This idea came from the fact that RUSA has a single award ceremony for all of its division awards. It's really quite lovely. And in that ceremony, they do each award one by one, and the person who received it does have an opportunity to, say thank you and give a few remarks.
Thank you, Melissa. That's a good question as we move forward. Thank you, Nancy O'Brien. We have a question here from a person from CJCLS. Are our awards still sponsored by EBSCO since there is no award money, or will we be renaming them? Another good question. John, did we talk about that on that committee that you co-chaired?
Well, we did not discuss renaming them. However, because we are asking that monetary gifts no longer be made, I think CJCLS probably needs to look at the appropriateness of having that vendor name on the award. I think probably it's time to drop that, would be my suggestion.
Thank you, John. Good question. We do have a couple there. Okay, a couple of awards with names like that, or sponsorships. All right, next question. If a group decides to stop offering a certain award, what would be the process to make that change? Allison, do you think that would be a board action form?
I think so, probably working with the board liaison.
Great, so working with your board liaison. Great, let's see. A comment and a question. It can already be difficult to attract nominations for awards with cash prizes. Would people see only a virtual ceremony worth the nomination process, time, and the workload? We do have RUSA as an example. I think Melissa talked to us about that. Thoughts from actually anyone here on that question of difficulty attracting nominations and the idea of a virtual ceremony? Maybe there's 2 points there. Let's see. Melissa, is your comment on this?
Yes, I'm the RSS, the RUSA RSS chair currently, and we actually had to sunset our RSS award for this very reason. So I'm not sure if that helps the conversation along, but we were not receiving any nominations, and there was no longer any type of award, cash award given.
All right. And do you know that is the reason for the lack of nominations?
Not specifically, but
Okay.
it was very difficult. And it did take us a 2-year cycle to sunset our specific award. But that's not saying that some of the other awards that are being given by RUSA are not going strong, because we do have a robust awards committee that does gather nominations. So I think that it's all depending on how it's promoted and marketed. And I think that it is a bit more important for academic librarians than it is for other types of libraries, especially when you're going up for promotion and merit and things like that. So I don't know if it's going to be a comparable situation.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, for that information. Nancy O'Brien.
Yes, thank you. And I'm having problems with my video, so sorry for no picture. I actually received an award from EBSS when there was no cash. And then, of course, later they gave cash values. But the honor was really significant. And as Melissa said, it may be more critical for academic librarians, but I've been on other award committees, and the process and the nomination process still makes it worthwhile. So I would say, you know, if somebody doesn't want to bother, that is too bad, but it really is a critical aspect of our profession to recognize excellence.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, I'm not seeing a hand up, so I'll go back to chat. Let's see. If a section creates a new grant with their section funding, would that grant also be administered along with the awards coordinating committee and the new submission portal? All right, I think there's a lot going on in that question, because we have awards and we have grants and maybe we have professional development and then other definitions to come. Allison or John, thoughts on that question of creating a new grant with section? John, thank you.
Well, we did say previously in this presentation that these policies would be applicable to both awards and grants. So I believe the answer is that, yes, if a new grant would be established, we would ask that it adhere to the policies that have been laid out here.
Thank you, John. Okay, let's see. Melissa has posted a link to the composition of the awards coordinating committee, if you haven't seen that yet, to the earlier question. And let's see. For the Excellence in Academic Libraries Award, the funding support included both a gift to the winners and funding for an ACRL officer to travel to on-campus award ceremony. Would that funding for an on-campus award ceremony longer be available either? I think that those award, John, thank you.
That issue did come up at one point in the discussions of the task force. We don't think our recommendations touched in any way on funding an ACRL officer to go to a ceremony. So I think that's still completely available if the board wishes to do it.
Thank you, John. All right, let's see, moving on. I would appreciate additional guidance / clarity moving forward about the terms in use. Awards, grants. Are all grants awards for purposes of standards and guidelines? Can we go back to the, well, no, should we go back to the definition slide? Or John, I see you looking thoughtful. Would you?
I don't mind. This is Anaya. I can add. I'm not saying that they're not clear. I'm just I guess this is more of a comment in that I can see it being confusing because the recommendation is that awards don't have a monetary thing. So we do have the small number of things that are by definition treated a little bit differently. And so you, in a lot of places, used what felt to me like general language, like awards. And so just as we're moving forward in documentation, if can be super clear, like this is all awards, this is awards, but not grants, this is awards and grants, that kind of thing. Like when are we talking about awards as a general category of things? And just so that I'm the vice chair of DOLS, and I know that we have one of the grant situations. So just I mentioned that because I want to have as much clarity as possible over what we're doing with that grant and how we can meet the recommendations. So that was more of a comment. It's entirely possible. It's completely clear, but putting it out there.
Thank you, Anaya. I think we're trying to be clear, but this is complicated. So I appreciate that comment. And I think our next committee, chaired by Melissa, which might be called the Awards Coordinating Committee, having a hard time keeping the, yes, thank you, all these straight, can look at that from a clarity purpose and help us make sure we're saying everything clearly. Thank you. All right, let's see. Any hands up? Nope. Let's see. The nomination process is still worthwhile. Honor is important. Okay. To STS, also has concerns about nominations with these new rules. We're going to try, but we have concerns. All right. Thank you. Like all things in ACRL, we can see how it goes and then make adjustments. So if we have an award, are we required to offer it every year? Or could we consider offering an award on a time frame? For example, every third year. I'm going to jump out and say, sure, but I think it might depend on what sort of initial documentation for a particular award has been put in place. Maybe this is a question directly to a board liaison for follow-up with ACRL staff. But it's a good question. Thank you. All right. Will the awards coordinating committee be providing the committees of the individual awards with documentation and specific instructions on how to submit the reviews of the awards and grants? And Melissa is nodding. So the answer, and it's there in print too. Yes, absolutely. The awards coordinating committee will do that. Okay. Okay. And the question about timing every year versus every couple of years, particularly around lifetime achievement awards, is something to consider. All right. Am I caught up? Oh my gosh. Okay. Other questions, comments,
I have a
concerns?
question. I can't
Yes.
find how to raise the hand here, I guess. Sorry, if this has been covered already. I was the awards chair actually a couple times for the DOLS distance learning section at the time. And I believe like there used to be a plaque that was well, Anaya's the incoming she's the chair, used to be the Routledge award, but there was also a plaque. I know the monetary thing is going away and then the honor is a big deal. Will there still be a plaque or something like that if it's virtual? Yes, no, or
I remember, thank you for that.
certificate, something to show that somebody got an award?
Thank you for that question. Melissa.
The conversations in the awards implementation task force were that we would no longer issue plaques because of the expense, but we would be issuing very nice certificates that would be suitable for framing for folks who would like to frame that and have something to hang in their office.
Thank you, Melissa, and for that question.
Thank you, that makes sense.
We have a question about when will the documentation and specific instructions on how to submit the reviews be ready. And the committee does begin its work July 1. Melissa, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an excellent question. And as somebody who has also chaired an awards committee, I am really empathetic to the feeling that there is a lot we're asking committees to do next year, and we have not yet given a lot of direction on how to do that work. The awards coordinating committee is still being appointed. I don't think it is like fully appointed yet. And my hope is to be able to have a conversation with Beth and Leo about sort of mapping out what that work will look like. And then the awards coordinating committee starting its work very quickly in July so that we can have some direction for committees relatively quickly. I'm sorry, I can't be really specific, and I know that that may be a little bit frustrating. I was only appointed chair of the committee about 10 days ago, so like I'm still working through what we have to do in the next year, but I will work really expeditiously to try and get some information and some direction and timelines out there for folks so that awards committees have a sense of what we're working with. And I apologize, Brian, that I can't be more specific than that today.
Thank you, Melissa. Another question, how iterative is this process? Will the coordinating committee be gathering feedback after that first year and evaluate how this went and potentially make adjustments? I'm going to say yes on their behalf. Melissa is nodding. So yes, we will. So much work has gone into getting us to this point that yes, Melissa leading this committee and the board next year will certainly be paying attention to, and I'll still be around as past president, but we'll certainly be paying attention to how this is playing out and what sort of changes that we should make for the best of our association. Okay. Additional questions? Let's see. Oh, Allison has our interim executive director has reminded us that the charge includes a review once every 5 years based on the program, regular basis, including awards, grants, financial support, division policies, etc. And recommendations can be made. So following the way we do a lot of our work in ACRL, a review process is in place. Okay. Other thoughts, questions, concerns? A reminder, if something occurs to you later, please talk to your board liaison or to Brian Lim, reach out. And the slides and recordings will be shared with everyone who is invited to this session. Okay. Is there anything else for today? Maybe someone's typing, so you hear, okay, thank you. All right, I think Brian, Allison, we are wrapping up. Big thank you to today's presenters, not printers. I broke a printer earlier today. Presenters, and also to members, so many ACRL members who've been on, as far as I can tell, 3 committees that have gotten us to this point. And we're grateful for everybody's service and participation today. Thank you. Have an excellent day.